nice to be here on Outliers Rollup as a Service Day. Hey everyone, my name is Arnold, and I'm a full-time research analyst at the blog. So today I'll be giving a very short presentation about the overview of the rollup landscape. So a quick introduction of myself, right? I'm a full-time research analyst at the blog, and I focus mainly on researching about blockchain scaling solutions. I have a background in chemical engineering at the Nanyang Technological University in Singapore. And for those of you who are interested, you can reach me via email, if you have any questions or you would just like to simply connect. So on today's agenda, we are going to start with a recap on rollups, which I think is something that most of you guys in the audience would already know. But because of the divergence in the rollup landscape, I think it is a great time to just go back to the definitions and how we classify them. And then I'll move on to the current state of rollups, where I cover a handful of relevant metrics before ending off with the future of rollups, where I give my opinions on how I think rollups might develop in the future. So without further ado, we can begin with a recap on rollups. So I said earlier that we should define what a rollup is, because I think the idea of a rollup is starting to be used as a common buzzword in the scaling domain. But a rollup at its core, right, should at the very least be able to abstract computation from the base layer while simultaneously deriving its security from that very same layer. And as we begin to see variations of rollups ranging from data availability modes to enshrined rollups, and even rollups as a service software starting to appear, I think it is important to remember the necessary features that rollups are supposed to have. There are two main types of rollups, right? Optimistic and zero-knowledge rollups, which uses fraud proofs and validity proofs, respectively. They are to be submitted on the base layer for them to be counted as a rollup, right? So with that, aside, this table here shows a quick overview of the existing rollups in the space today and how we can classify them. So, the top half, we have what we define as a traditional rollup, right, which are solutions that use on-chain data availability. And then we also start to see more varieties, more alternatives, such as Validiums and plasma chains that, they are commonly referred together as layer 2s together with rollups. But Validiums and plasma chains, they actually use off-chain data availability. So, with the whole concept of data availability abstraction coming in, it has kind of blurred the lines for layer 2 solutions. But I think this table pretty much sums it up, gives the clarity that we need on how we can define and differentiate the different scaling solutions today. So moving on to the main part of the presentation, we're going to be looking at the current state of rollups. We start off first by looking at the total value locked, or TVL, of rollups today. And I think one of the encouraging signs of growth in the rollup space is the fact that TVL has actually increased over 114% amidst the bear markets over the past 6 months, where it actually grew from 4.1 billion in TVL to up to 8.8 billion. However, we should know that part of this surge was actually due to the Arbitrum airdrop, as can be seen by the sharp uptick in March, right after Arbitrum airdrop its token, right? Another interesting fact about the TVL here is that 86% of all TVLs across rollups are actually found on optimistic rollups, and this can actually be attributed, namely to the ease of deployment as well as the convenience of the user experience on optimistic rollups, and that can onboard and retain users a lot more effectively than ZK rollups. Additionally, we also know that the 4 optimistic rollups, as seen in the previous slide, they actually have launched their own native tokens to incentivize liquidity in their own respective ecosystem. So naturally, this helps them capture a larger market share of the entire rollup domain. Now, if we were to look at the daily number of transactions on rollups, because it provides a proxy for the adoption, we notice that it has actually grown by over 153% over the past 6 months, comparatively to the number of transactions on Ethereum, which has only grown by 44%. This means to say, that rollups are actually starting to account for more on-chain activity than on Ethereum. And one of the really encouraging signs here is the fact that optimistic rollups are now processing more daily transactions combined than Ethereum, at least over the past 3 months, ever since the Arbitrum airdrop. And although this figure has fallen off since the airdrop hype, I would say that generally rollups are still showing signs of gaining significant traction in terms of adoption, because we can see that although the hype has passed, the overall transaction growth is still generally on a slight uptrend, especially for both optimistic rollups and ZK rollups. So the next metric here that is highly relevant is the amount of gas, right, that rollups consume, because essentially the gas that they consume is an indicator of how much block space that they are actually taking up on Ethereum, right? So as adoption on rollups increase, we should also see a corresponding increase in the gas consumption on Ethereum. And I think, from the charts here, we can see that, both optimistic rollups and ZK rollups, they consume comparable magnitudes of gas. And that is pretty peculiar, namely because ZK rollups are, touted to scale Ethereum a lot more efficiently than optimistic rollups, right? So, where is the advantage here? It should be noted, right, that this advantage that ZK rollups have over optimistic rollups is only really significant at high transaction volumes, which is not really present today, right? Because ZK rollups only start to show that kind of scaling when there are more transactions being compressed into a single proof. But at low transaction volumes, the main bulk of the gas consumption actually comes from the transaction data, right? So in March, we can see that there's actually a huge spike in the gas consumed by ZK rollups. This is partly due to the Sybil activity on rollups such as ZK rollups, such as Starknet and ZK Sync Era, which have yet to launch a token. And a lot of these Sybil actors are, going to these rollups because they are transacting on them in expectation of a potential airdrop in the future, right? And from the chart, we can see that validiums, on the other hand, consume far less gas than both types of rollups. So validium is a type of scaling solution that uses off-chain data availability, and this also demonstrates, right, the impact of hosting transaction data on chain on a rollup's gas consumption. And that, I think, is why we're starting to see a market for alternative data solutions. And the next metric here that I think would interest some of the viewers is the revenue of optimistic rollups. The reason why we're looking at revenue of optimistic rollups here is because the revenue for them is public data, so it's much easier to get an accurate account of this data. And here we can see, optimistic rollups are generating millions in revenue every month, right? Just so this revenue is calculated by taking the amount of gas expenditure that is spent on the layer 2, right? We see Arbitrum and Optimism generating over 4.6 and 2.7 million in average monthly revenue. And these figures are continuing to trend upwards even after the Arbitrum airdrop in March, even after the recent Optimism token unlock, and even amidst the overall bearish crypto market sentiment, right? So this actually indicates the relative independence for the demand of rollup block space with respect to the general crypto markets. Something that is interesting here would be the fact that both Metis and Boba, they appear to have fallen off and they're diverging in terms of their growth trends. And this shows how optimistic rollups, even though they offer similar user experience, similar services, but they are not all the same, right? And there are various factors that can account for this, such as first mover advantage, trade-offs in security, as well as the depth of liquidity in the ecosystem, which can significantly impact the adoption, right? Basically, launching a rollup doesn't guarantee that you will find adoption, right? It's starting to seem like almost like it's like a winner takes all kind of situation, but obviously this can change over time. And this slide is just counting for the gas that is paid by rollups on Ethereum, right, for posting batches of transaction and transaction data. And we can see that most rollups are still profitable, including Boba and Metis, right? We see Optimism and Arbitrum generating 2.7 and 4.5 million in average monthly profits, right? And Boba and Metis are also relatively profitable. Obviously, this analysis isn't perfect because it neglects the cost of running a sequencer node, which may or may not be trivial. But these profits are also calculated in US dollars, whereas the actual currency being used is Ether, which means to say that these profits can fluctuate depending on when they choose to sell the Ether for US dollars. Right. And then we're going to move to the third and final segment of the presentation, where I give my opinion on where we might see the future of rollups gravitate towards. I think the first notable development here would be data availability abstraction, right? It's a pretty hot topic that has been talked about. We see solutions such as Celestia, Avail, previously known as Polygon Avail, right? As well as Arbitrum, Anytrust, starting to surface and see certain levels of adoption, right? These solutions offer an alternative environment for transaction data to be posted, right? Both Celestia and Avail, they are data availability layers, independent data availability layers, and they use data availability sampling to guarantee that blocks data is posted on is made available, right? With just a fraction of the said data being posted on chain. So effectively, what they do is that they reduce the amount of data that has to be posted on chain, and therefore it should reduce the amount of cost that a rollup incurs for posting the data on Ethereum. And then we have Arbitrum Anytrust, which basically uses a fallback mechanism, where it stores data off-chain that is secured by a data availability committee. And if the committee fails, the Anytrust chain will just resort to posting the transaction data on Ethereum like a normal optimistic rollups would, right? So these are some of the solutions that we're starting to see to address, the high cost of posting transaction data on Ethereum. And then the next unique development that I think would be the evolution of rollups as a service, or RAS for short, right? We have AltLayer, the host of today's event, as well as Caldera and Slash, being their own RAS in their own terms. They each of them have their own unique focus and their unique features. So firstly, we talk about AltLayer, which I think one of the unique feature that they have is the flash layer feature, right? Where a developer can easily spin up a rollup to perform one-off activities such as an NFT mint before settling back on Ethereum or another layer that AltLayer might support. This is significant because it can reduce the stress of ad hoc events, right? Because we've seen how gas spikes when there's a popular NFT mint on Ethereum, right? And that can affect the experience for all other Ethereum users, not just the NFT minters. So having a flash layer that takes away this ad hoc demand can certainly reduce the stress on the base layer. Then we have Caldera. Caldera's focus is mainly to spin up rollups with alternative VMs, virtual machines, before settling them on EVM chains. So this should improve the accessibility for developers to build on EVM chains, because they can spin up their own preferred VMs as a rollup, and then settle the outcome of that rollup on an underlying EVM chain. So this once again should bring about scalability for not only Ethereum but other EVM chains as well. We also have Slash SDK, which actually allows developers to spin up layer 3s on Starknet. And I should note that while this isn't exactly like a rollup, the idea behind spinning up an additional layer easily or conveniently does make it analogous to RAS software. And I think the main point of all of these rollups as a service is to abstract the complexity of launching a rollup and make it more accessible for both developers as well as users to access rollup block space that is much cheaper than the block space on Ethereum. So I think here is a certainty that like rollups as a service have a huge potential to scale Ethereum in the future. And the last notable development here would be rollups building on other blockchains, right? We have Alpen Labs, which is trying to build like ZK rollups on Bitcoin. We have Dimension, which is rollup as a service platform as well, that is building rollups on Cosmos. And then we have Tezos with their own Enshrine rollups, right? So we start off with the Bitcoin ZK rollups, right? One of the challenge that they face right now is the fact that Bitcoin lacks a lot of expressibility in terms of their programming language script. Also, Alpen is currently building in stealth, so there isn't really much information on their progress, but it is something to keep an eye out for, that Bitcoin may one day see rollups of its own. Yeah. Then we have Dimension on Cosmos, which is, as I said, like a RAS solution. But its main focus, unlike the previous RAS that were covered, is more on interoperability. So it's meant to make like rollups speak to each other more easily to facilitate that cross-chain or cross-rollup interactions, right? Then Tezos have their own like enshrined rollups, which basically means that the rollups are enshrined within Tezos itself. So they don't actually need to have like additional like layer to scale it. And this allows the enshrined rollup to scale Tezos without needing to sacrifice a lot of security. Or yeah, basically it's inheriting all of Tezos security. And while these solutions don't necessarily, scale Ethereum, I think they are highly relevant to understand and keep an eye out for, because they can provide a clue or valuable insights as to how the rollup landscape can develop on Ethereum. So that is something that is worth, keeping an eye out for. Right, so just onto the closing remarks. I'm not too sure if there's been too much content, but like there are three main takeaways here, right? I think if you are to leave this presentation, the three main takeaways. Firstly, rollups, they are becoming an integral and inescapable aspect to scale Ethereum, right? We see more transactions on rollups combined than on Ethereum over the past 5 months. And this trend is, could continue, especially if the bull market returns and Ethereum becomes highly costly to use. Number two, rollups can be very profitable, right? We see optimistic rollups alone generating over 8.5 in aggregate monthly revenue. And this is just optimistic rollups. Much less to say if we talk about ZK rollups or even Validiums, which have very low cost. I think scaling Ethereum is not only in the interest of the Ethereum community, but like those who scale Ethereum can stand to gain as well. And the third and final point is that the landscape for improving and enhancing rollups is very vibrant and it's diverging, right? We're seeing a myriad of solutions starting to appear, ranging from data availability, rollups as a service, and rollups on other blockchains becoming increasingly common. And this will all add to the diversity of solutions that we will see that will scale blockchains in the future. So with that, I think the overview of the rollup landscape, in short, is just full of activity, and this is amidst the Dow bear market. So I think that when the bull market comes back, it will be very interesting to see how all of these rollups continue to develop, how the technology will continue to grow, and more importantly, for those people growing the technology, what it means for their transaction costs, as well as those running the rollups, what it means for them to be a profitable business. So I do think that this is a very robust ecosystem that is ready for the bull market. And with that, I thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, you can reach me via my email or on Twitter. And I hope that my presentation was insightful and valuable to all of you out there. Thank you.